Welcome, Clarity Coders. Today I'm going to give you a quick introduction to Flask. Flask is going to allow us to get a web app quickly online so we can share our programs with others. Now in this video, I'm going to get a sample application up and running for you on Heroku, which is going to be no cost to you, and you'll actually be able to share your app with a URL. This is going to be a bare bones app. I want to get you up and running as quick as possible. So if you just want to learn how to get it online and create it, this is the video for you. In future videos, we're going to show you how to connect databases and go a little farther. So let's jump right in. I'm going to assume for this tutorial that you have Python installed and it's on the path so we can use pip to install our packages as well. If you don't have that, you can reference this video, and in the start of it, I show how to install Python and make sure it's on the path so you can use pip and those kind of tools that we're going to use in this tutorial. So you can open up your favorite editor or IDE or whatever you want to use, and all these commands, I'm going to enter some in Visual Studio Terminal. I'm going to enter others in a bash shell, so you can use whatever you would like. The first thing that I've already done is I've created a folder for this project, and I'm going to call this, I call this folder Flask Tutorial. You can call it whatever you want. You just want to make sure it has its own folder that we're going to store all of our files and our dependencies in, so when we push it up to Heroku, it's all in one spot. Then I'm going to open up a terminal. And the first thing I'm going to install is virtual environment. So we want to use a virtual environment for this so we can have a single group of dependencies for our project. So you can install package globally. A big package that you use all the time, like pandas, you might install it globally on your PC so you can use it for every project. In this case, we're going to install packages just for this individual project. So we're going to create a virtual environment. So the first thing we need to do is pip install virtual env. We're going to let this install. It shouldn't take too long. Now that that's installed, we're going to actually initiate our virtual environment. So I'm going to call that library virtual env, then space, and then I can name the virtual environment whatever I want. Now, a standard that you see most of the time is just calling it env, so I'm going to stick with that standard. Could call it anything you wanted. I would recommend sticking with this standard though. It's a little late in the day. You can see I already have a typo here. Virtual env. And you can see here that it created a virtual an env folder, which contains our environment inside of it. Now to activate this environment, you can expand this folder, and there, depending if you're what operating system you're on, there should be a scripts or a bin folder. And inside of that, there's going to be an activate script. That's what we're looking for. So we're going to run that depending on where it is. So to do that, I'm going to do /env scripts activate. And now you can see that I'm inside of this env environment. Now for Windows users, if this defaults to PowerShell, I like to go back to the just command prompt. So I select my default shell, I selected command prompt down here if you have issues. So now we're inside of our virtual environment. So anything we do pip install now is just going to install for this virtual environment. And when we come back to this, if you reboot your computer or something, you want to make sure you go inside of this virtual environment before installing any packages or anything like that. So now we're going to install Flask, pip install Flask. Once that's finished, we're ready to create our app. I'm going to call it app.py. See, originally I put it in the env folder. I want to make sure it's outside of the env folder. And now we can go ahead and create our app. So I'm going to say from Flask, import Flask. Watch your capital here. Then I'm just going to create our app. So I'm going to say app equals, I'll do Flask __ name __. So again, this is just kind of the setup here. This is just how Flask initializes your app. You could use any variable you want here. Again, we're just following standards. Now Flask uses routes to navigate pages. So we have to set up routes depending on what web page we're on, that sort of thing. So our base of our app is just going to be app.route. And it's just going to be /. That's just going to be our root. We're going to define that, and we're just going to call it index. And we're going to return just a simple string. Something like that. Now we need to add a line similarly to our last program to make sure this is the main program. So we're going to add __main. And we'll do app.run. And we can also set our debugging equal to true. So if we have any errors, they show up on our page. Let me fix my indents. And you can see it gives us a local host URL down here that we can visit our web app. So you can navigate to this. I'm just going to control click on it. And you can see we get a very exciting starter app here. So now if we want to be able to render HTML pages and then pull code into it, giving the power of programming, and we're mixing it with web design to give us a web app. So we don't want to just represent a string here. We don't want to just print out a string. We actually want to render an HTML page and then pull code into that. So we're going to create a new folder, and this is in the base directory here, so we're not inside of env again, and we're going to call this templates. Now you want to call it exactly templates. This is where Flask knows to look for our HTML pages. And we can create a new file inside of here, and we can just call it index.html. And here, let's just create a very bare bones HTML page. So I'm just going to give some HTML tags. I'm going to give a header. Inside of here, I can give a title. I'm just going to say Clarity Coders. Then I'm also going to give a body tag. And inside of here, I can just say hello world again. And now inside of our app, instead of rendering this string, we're going to actually render our template. So we're going to do render underscore template index.html. Now you'll notice again, I didn't do the directory here. That's because Flask is going to know to look in this templates folder. Now we also have to import this up here as well. So that should take care of that issue that we were having there. And now if we open this up again, or if you refresh it, I actually closed out of mine, but you can see that we now have a title up top that says Clarity Coders, and we also have a body that says Hello World. Now, we don't want to have to create this page each time for every page in our application. We basically want to have some static content for our HTML page and then be able to dynamically pull code into the middle of it. So we're going to create a base HTML, and that's going to basically be our template, which is this right now, but we're going to call it base.html. And then when we have a multiple page web app, we can use this base HTML as our default. So I'm going to copy this from index.html for right now. And now our title might change depending on the page of our website or things we're pulling in, scripts we're pulling in. So I want this to be dynamic. I want to be able to change it. So I'm going to use some Jenga 2 syntax to dynamically pull in a block of code. And I'll show you what that looks like. So inside of here, I'm going to name this block of code. So I'm going to name it block header. You can call it whatever you want. And then down here, I'm going to end that block. And then inside the body, I'm going to do something similar. I'm going to name this my block body. And then down here, I'm going to end that block. And we also need percent signs after each of these. So now in our index.html, now we've simplified this. We don't have to redo this on every page of our website. So instead of redoing all this code, now remember, this was a bare bones HTML page. Usually it's a lot more complicated than that. So it kind of seems silly to do this right now, but in the future, this is going to be a little more detailed. Now all we have to do is say that we're using the base HTML and we're extending that code. So I'm going to do the same syntax here. And I'm going to say this extends base.html. And this should be in quotes. Just like that. And now I can tell where this all goes. So I'm going to say this goes inside of our header block. And we're going to end that block. And we'll do the same thing down here. Oops, we want to leave that h1 tag in there. Except this one was our body block. And now let's add some exclamation points. Just so we know this has changed, we can save this. And I keep closing out of that window, but if we open it up again, you can see we have an unknown tag of header. And we forgot to write block before these, so we'll do block, block, Now you notice I left this open this time. You can just refresh it each time. Unless your Python program has a syntax error, then it's going to crash the whole thing. So you can see that this did update, and now we're dynamically pulling our code into our template. Again, this is kind of a boilerplate, so it may seem silly to do all this now, but this is setting up for bigger projects with multiple pages and things like that. So we're all good there. So now, for our little silly app here, I'm actually going to create a weight converter that converts pounds to kilograms and kilograms back to pounds. This is a simple app that could be done in JavaScript as well. We're just using this to set up our Flask and get it up on Heroku and show you how that whole process works. And then we're going to build on databases from there, which is where Flask is going to really shine. So I'm going to remove this H1. Well, I can change it to weight converter. And now I'm just going to create a form that someone can enter their weight and get it converted to kilograms or back to pounds, whichever way you're going. So we're going to create a form. We're going to say the action equals our slash, which was our base directory, remember? And our method is going to equal post. So when we push the submit button, it's going to post this form, and then we can grab it in our app and manipulate that data. I'm going to paste the inside of our form here and then walk you through it real quick so you don't have to watch me type. So what we're going to do here, we got a form created that's going to post our data. We're going to have a label that says weight, and then we're going to have an input box where you can enter your weight. Then we're going to have a drop-down box where you can select your unit of measurement. So you're going to select either pounds or kilograms, and then you can submit that form. So once you have this all saved, and if you don't want to type this out, you can grab it from the GitHub. We can refresh this, and you can see we got our weight converter here. Now, we have an issue right out of the box. Obviously, it's not going to do anything or work, but if I type in my weight in pounds and push get weight, you can see it's not even allowed to submit this form. Our app isn't. So we have to make one change in our app. We have to make a few, but to even have the ability to render this data, we have to change the permissions here and allow the form to post as well. So here we're going to add to the default permissions. So we're going to pass in the methods that we can use. And we're going to say we are allowed to use post, which we're going to use with our form. And we're also allowed to use get, which is default. So now if we pull this up and reboot it, refresh it rather, you'll notice that if I push get weight, it doesn't do anything. It does clear out our form, but it doesn't error out either. So now this is working okay. So we have to return a render here every time. So it's going to want us to return some type of render request. But if the type is post, then we're going to look to see if we have a weight set here that we can convert. So to do that, we're just going to check and see if the request type is post or not. So to do that, we're going to import request. And then here, we're just going to say if our request.method equals post, we can do something in this method. So for right now, let's just print out an F string. And inside that F string, I want to reference some variables. Now, the variables are going to depend on what you name the items in your form. So if you look back to the form, we have names set for each of these inputs. One's weight and one's the unit. So here I'm going to use those to grab out those variables. Now, how do I know those variables are set? Because we posted that data back. So I'm going to actually create a variable to hold these. I'm going to set weight equal, and I'm going to do request.form. And just like with a list, I can request, or a dictionary kind of using a key. I'm going to use that name value to get the value back out of our form. I'm going to copy that. We're going to also get our unit back. Remember that was named unit. And then here I can do weight and unit as well. And you'll notice I saved this along the way and caused our Python script to error out. So I'm going to have to rerun this now. A bad habit of control S-ing too often. So now when we post this form back, it should hit this, get our weight, get our unit, and then print it out to the screen. So we'll enter 190, get weight, see it does nothing. But if we look in our command prompt, you can see that it did print out the weight and the unit there. Awesome, so this is working. Now we need to write a little method to convert this. So I'm just gonna create a function up top and I'm gonna call it convert. And I'm going to say we're going to pass in a weight and a unit. And here, if our unit of measurement equals pounds, remember spelling matters, capitalization matters. I'm going to take our weight and I'm just going to reuse that variable. So I'm going to take whatever was in our weight before. So if it was in pounds, then I'm going to need to divide it by 2.205 to get kilograms. Thank you, Google. Now, weight is going to be a string when we bring it into this program, even though they entered a number, hopefully. We're not going to error check. So if they enter a string or something like that, it's going to error out. But we're going to go ahead and convert that weight to a float. And just to keep this a little neat, we're also going to round this answer. So we're going to round whatever this returns to 2 decimal points, just so it doesn't look too crazy. Now, I'm also going to change the unit of measurement because now our weight is in kilograms after we do this. So I'm going to change it to kilograms. Now, I'm going to say elif. Now, you have to use else if, because if you use just a regular if here, then we've changed our unit to kilograms, so it's going to convert it back. So I'm going to use an else if, and I'm going to say if our unit equals kilograms. Now, why did I do that instead of just using an else? Well, maybe you want to add other units of measurement, so I don't want to just catch everything. I want to make sure it's kilograms. That's up to you. And then I'm essentially going to do the opposite. I'm going to grab these two things. So if it's in kilograms, then I need to multiply it by 2.205, and that's going to give me back pounds. Then after this is done, I'm just going to return both variables back. So I'm going to return weight, and I'm going to return the unit of measurement. So now, instead of printing out that value, we can leave that. I can still print it out. But I'm going to reassign our weight and our unit, and I'm going to set that equal to whatever our convert function returns when I pass in the weight and unit. So this can be a little confusing, but whatever my form sends back, so if it says 190 in pounds, I'm going to run the convert function. It's going to come up here. It's going to say, is the unit equal to pounds? The answer is yes. So it's going to take 190 and divide it by 2.205 and give whatever that is. I'm not that great at math on the fly. And it's going to change the unit to kilograms. It's not going to run the else if, because if this returns true, then it's going to not run any else if. And it's going to return the weight and the unit back, which is going to be the kilogram amount, and the unit's going to be switched to kilograms. Then it's going to assign those in the variable. Now, these don't have to be named exactly the same. You can see I did here. Order is what matters. So if I switch these around, this would break. This would store 80 in the unit and kilograms in the weight. So the order matters, not the name of the variables, even though we're using the same. So now we have our new weight and our new unit of measurement after we convert it. And now we want to render the page with those values. So our else is going to be if we didn't post the form back. So the else is just going to be that first case where we don't have a unit of measurement. When we first open this app, it's going to render this template like normal. If we do have these new units of measurements, we want to do something a little different. We still want to render the template, but we also want to pass back our values. So we're going to say our weight equals weight and our unit of measurement equals unit. So now our page is going to be able to use these variables. So now if we go back to index.html, let's simply print out those variables. So we're going to print out our weight here. I'm using Jenga 2 syntax again here with the curly brackets, and I'm going to say unit as well. And this is where I'm going to use the double curly brackets, which literally means it's just going to output that value to the screen. Awesome. Now let's open this back up. You can see this first time we run it, nothing's going to happen here. If I enter, 290. Let's say 190, and I'm saying it's in pounds right now. I want to get my weight, and you can see it converted it to kilograms. Now, if I convert it back, I'll do 86.17 just so we can see. I'm going to say it's in kilograms this time. Get weight, and you can see it converts it back to 190 pounds. So our weight converter is working. Now again, this isn't anything special. We're not going to do any styling or database work this time around, but we got this running. I want to show you how you can host it to Heroku for free as well. You need just a couple things. The first thing you need to do is go out and grab Git if you don't have it. So Git is a version control system. Git is not GitHub. You can post things to GitHub with Git, but Git is something that's going to allow version control on your own system, and it's its own animal, and we're not going to get too deep in this lesson about Git, but I want you to go ahead and download whatever version of Git you have here on this web page. Before we work with Git, we're actually going to install one more dependency here. We're going to do pip install Gunicorn. This is going to allow us to freeze our dependencies. So now that we have Gunicorn installed, this is going to allow us to freeze our dependencies to a text file. So what we're going to do, make sure you're still inside your virtual environment, and we're going to do pip freeze greater than requirements.txt. And that's just going to spit out a requirements.txt file here. Now, if you went out and installed git bash, you can go ahead and open that, and we're going to navigate to our folder wherever you were working. So I'm going to cd into documents, Python scripts, Flask tutorial, and here I'm going to initialize a Git repository. So I'm going to do git init, and that's going to initialize an empty repository. And here I can do git add dot. So what that's going to do, it's going to mark all these files to be added to my project. So now I'm going to git commit am. So this is going to actually commit all these files to my project. And I'm just going to say init app. And now we've initialized our Git repository. Now we need to go out and sign up for Heroku. This is free. So go ahead and click on Heroku. You're going to go ahead and go through the sign up process. Once you're all finished with that, we need to install the command line tool as well. So then we're going to search for Heroku CLI, the command line interface. We're going to go to this web page and download the installer as well. Not Mac if you're on a Windows computer. We're going to download the Windows version since I'm on a Windows computer. This is pretty simple. There's nothing really we want to set here. Leave the defaults. Just make sure the set path to Heroku is checked, and then go ahead and run that installer. Now, once that installer is finished, you're going to have to restart whatever shell you were in. So if you're in a shell already, you can see that it says Heroku command not found. We're going to close out of that. I'm going to open up another git bash shell. Now I'm going to cd back into that directory. So I'm going to go to documents, in my case, documents, Python scripts, Flask tutorial, and you should be able to type Heroku now, and it should recognize it. If it doesn't, and you get the command not found again, something with your install didn't work right, and you need to reinstall that command line interface or restart your terminal. Remember to close out of the terminal. So we're almost ready to create our Heroku app. We need to do one more thing. We need to add a file here to tell Heroku how to start our app. So we're going to call this proc file. And inside this proc file, we're just going to say how to start up our app. So we're going to do web, Gunicorn, app. That should be it. Now we want to commit these changes as well. We initialized our app already. So if you run git status, you can see that there's a new file that's not added. So we need to do git add dot, git commit, am, proc file. Now if you run git status, you can see there's nothing to commit, so we're all good there. Now we just need to create our app, so we're going to say Heroku create app, and then we got to give it a unique name. So you're going to have to come up with something that's different than what I have here. It has to be completely unique. So I'm going to say Flask-tutorial-clarity coders. Now you're going to have to do something else other than this, something different. I'm going to go ahead and run that. And I don't need to push. I don't need to put app there, I don't think. So I think it's just Heroku create and then your app name, whatever that is. And if this is your first time, which I just reinstalled it for us, we actually have to log in. Push log in. I'm going to enter my information here. And I can close out of that now. Open back up. And you can see it's logged in, logging in, done. Now that we have this one logged in, I think I actually have to open up another command window. I'm going to open up another git bash shell. I'm going to navigate back to my directory, do Heroku create, and create my app. It didn't like my capitals, so I'm going to go ahead and change those to lowercase. It's fighting me on everything right now. And now you can see we have created some remote instances. So if you do git remote v, you can see that we do have a Heroku URL now that we can push our git instance to. Now we already created our git instance. Remember, you want to make sure everything's committed. You can see if we do git status, there's nothing left to commit. So now we can push this to our Heroku master. So we're going to do git push Heroku master. Didn't like that. Let's try and change this to a capital P, proc file. And you can see here, I misspelled requirements. My spelling is off today. Make sure you're spelling this file correctly. It's what Heroku looks for to see what packages are installed, and that's how it detects what languages you're using. So I changed this to requirements.txt, spelled correctly. We're going to do git add dot git commit am. We fixed the proc file. Now we'll git push Heroku master. So last time we got our deploy up successfully, but the app crashed. This time with our fixed proc file, which was just a case issue. It's just that finickiness of it. Again, just problem solving, tracing these problems back. Now we have our correct proc file. See, everything looks good. Let's copy that. Let's go back and reload our Heroku version of the app. So I grab that URL, and you can see we have our weight converter now. I can do 190 pounds. I can get back kilograms, switch to kilograms, put in some form of kilograms, and I get the pounds back. Nothing special here, but we successfully got our app posted to Heroku. This is a live URL, so you can visit it. Again, you can share your apps this way. Probably not this app, but something unique that you create. And in the next lesson, we're going to talk about hooking up databases and doing what Flask really does best, which is kind of that back-end data handling. Thank you guys for watching. If you could, I'd really appreciate any likes or subscribes. It helps the channel. We're a small channel. And until next time, keep coding.